Okay, because I'm going to remind you at the end and then give you a way to do it. All right, so we gave you a lot of things. I want to focus in on this form here, the CA10. This is a funny form, the CA10. Anybody that, like you're watching us online, you can go to federalinjurycenters.com and all the forms are there. And you can just print one off or look at it there if you like. The form CA10, if I ask, okay, who here has ever seen this form before right now? Okay, so 2 people raise their hand. And that's pretty common. Okay, most of the time I say, who's ever heard of this form? And if there's 100 people in the room, 3 people raise their hand that they've ever seen the form. Well, look what it's called. What a federal employee should do when injured at work. Does that sound important? It sounds like, if I knew what was in this form, I might be able to get a claim at least initiated. Well, if you notice, it says revised October 2021. So right before October 21, the revision date was October of 1987. And in the bottom middle where it says post on agency's website, it used to say post on employee's bulletin board. Now, who's been with their agency more than 10 years? More than 20 years? Okay. Did you ever see that posted anywhere? No. Right. It's never been, maybe? Okay, maybe one? Yeah. Okay. Well, well, you're the reason it was posted. Okay, yeah, so that's one. But most people had never seen it. And it said post on the bulletin board. Well, if you have seen this form, you'd know what to do. Because the next thing is, how do I report an injury? I don't know how. Well, it says at the top, just go tell your supervisor. You did it already. But most people don't know that. And by the way, reporting to your supervisor is generally pretty painful. Okay. So remember, it was revised in 1987. Post on employee's bulletin board. So I would ask this question. So you mean you've never seen it? In 30 whatever years, you never saw this? I don't understand. It's almost like they don't want you to know. Okay? And by almost, it's exactly like they don't want you to know. Well, now they've changed it. And it says post on agency's website. And again, only 2 people in this room had ever even heard of this form before, maybe 3. So let's say that you're someone that never heard of this form. But it's only now on your agency's website. Who goes to your agency's website just for fun? Okay, so you don't go there for fun. Now, who's going to go to your agency's website to find something you've never even heard of? You've never heard of it, so you're not looking for it. This is invisible now. It's completely invisible. Before, there was a chance because it's hanging on a bulletin board, maybe. Now, it's on a website that we're not going to go to. So what I want to tell you all, because you all have some now, we've got more, is who would be willing to take this and go and repost it on a bulletin board at work? Because if you get this posted on a bulletin board at work, people have a chance. They at least have a fair shot at getting a claim accepted. Now, you know why only 14% of claims are accepted? Because OSHA only tracks accepted claims. They don't track denied claims, and they have no way of tracking claims that were never attempted. They wouldn't know. But at the bottom of the page that OSHA has, it says it only includes claims with these codes. Well, that just means claims that weren't denied. So they're only telling us about the accepted claims. But you never get to hear about the ones that weren't attempted. And those are the ones that concern me the most, because they're not attempted for a couple of reasons. One, they don't know this form. And 2, they're scared. Right? Who is scared of their supervisor in this room? It's okay to raise your hand. Okay. I usually get a lot more hands than that. I get it all the time. And that's because supervisors do what? They threaten you. They harass you, they retaliate, they tell you you're going to be fired. They bully you. Okay, that's exactly the right word. You get bullied by management, right?
They don't fill your paperwork out right.
That's right, they don't. Well, here's the beauty of it now. Now that we have this CA10, here's what we do. We go to the supervisor, and the second section says that you can A, choose your own doctor, and B, get a CA16. So let's talk about that. Who's been told or heard someone been told that they have to go to whatever doctor that your manager tells you to go to? Nobody's ever even heard that? In the back, you've heard everything. Okay, so this is something that's really common. I hear it all the time.
I listen to your thing every week.
Well, so you should know. I just posted something about it yesterday, too. That the law, and I'm not going to bore you by reading the law, but let me tell you what it says. You have the right to choose your own doctor, and it says it right there in that second paragraph. You have the right to choose your own doctor. Your supervisor's job is to tell you that you have the right to choose your own doctor. that should have like a laugh face emoji sitting next to it. Because supervisors have never told you can go choose your own doctor. If it happened to anybody in this room, it's the first time I've ever heard it. It says that they can't get in the way of your right to choose, and they can't force you to go to a doctor who's employed or contracted by your agency, which was written for the VA, I believe. Maybe some bases who have health centers on them. So you can't be forced to go to another doctor, and they have to tell you can go anywhere you want to go. But then somebody today was saying, well, I'm driving a long way. Are they going to make me go to another doctor? They can't. It is your absolute right to choose a doctor. And, we're happy that everyone here is here. But most of your friends have never heard of us yet. And they've never seen this form. And they feel like it's hopeless, and they're on an island by themselves. And every single day, somebody says, I wish I would have known about you when I was hurt. Every day. We heard it yesterday, and I will hear it again today. It happens every day. So you have the right to choose. But there's this form called a CA-16. And we've got some stuff in here in your folder about 16s, but who's ever heard of a CA-16? Okay, so more people in this room, probably because you watch us, and we talk about it all the time. The CA-16, if it were an animal, it'd be a unicorn. Okay, because we've heard of it, but we've never really seen one in nature. And that's how it is, because your supervisors are telling you they don't have to give you a CA-16 because you're not hurt bad enough. Does your supervisor have a medical license? I'd ask to see it. Unless you don't want to upset your supervisor, then maybe not. I personally don't care because they can't fire me. And they shouldn't be able to do that to you either. But the CA-16 pays all of your medical bills for the first 60 days. Now, a lot of injuries resolve in 60 days. That's probably a good deal, right? Well, another reason people don't get help is because they don't realize OWCP will help them. They never heard of a CA-16. Now they're forced to use their health insurance. Health insurance isn't free. And she said something to me a few months ago that I hadn't thought of before. If everybody at your agency used their health insurance for a work injury, what would happen to your premiums next year? They'd be even more unaffordable. They go up. And so you don't want to use your health insurance, but most people try to use their health insurance if they get any help at all. But OWCP is here and it's free. Who here has ever paid $1 for injury care at this office? It's not allowed. We wouldn't even think about it. We wouldn't even dream of taking your money. And because OWCP pays just fine if you do a good job. Okay, and we're 100%, so we do a pretty good job. The third section of this form says file a written notice. Well, in the old days, prior to 2021, it was all on paper. Whose injury is old enough that you had to fill it out on paper, like with pen and paper? Well, and that was the painful part because management doesn't want to do it. They don't want to fill out their part, and that one piece of paper is just overwhelming for supervisors because they only have to fill out one page. You fill out the other one, so it's really easy for them. Well, now there's a thing called e-comp. Who files on e-comp or ever goes to e-comp? You all should have an e-comp account. Well, now that you have e-comp, you just fill it out online, and the supervisor gets an email. You don't have to deal with them anymore, and you don't need the receipt that was prior, saying that you have, you filed it in time. Now they have 10 days to turn it in because there's a record of when they received their email. And if they don't send your paperwork in within 10 days, which is the rule, who's active in their union here? Everybody should be. I've never been in a union, but I think being in the union is generally a smart thing. Well, you file a grievance. If they don't turn that in time, they're preventing you. They're blocking you from getting help. Right? So I love a grievance. I wish I could file them myself. I would also file one if you don't get a CA-16, and I would tell all your friends. Now, you're here, so you know about it, and your 60 days is up. Right? You don't get a CA-16 anymore if you didn't get one already. But you've got friends that are going to need that. We don't care. Okay? You can come here without a CA-16. We don't care because we're going to get your claim accepted anyways. But what if you need surgery? What if you need an MRI? Right? The CA-16 pays those bills too. And so that's why it's so important to get it. And as a nurse practitioner, you should make sure everybody has one. Right? I mean, if anybody comes to see you.
Well, they don't come see me. Not if they
Okay.
got injured in the job.
Well, tell your coworkers.
Yeah.
But the CA-16 is really important. It's one of two things that when missed, it's most of the cause of financial ruin in someone's life. If you don't get a CA-16, you don't have any way to pay your medical bills. Unless you find us and it doesn't matter. And the next thing is continuation of pay. Everyone know what that is? So continuation of pay is good for 45 days of time off. People that don't get a CA-16 and don't get COP generally have a really bad time because they can't pay their medical bills and they can't take off of work, but they can't go to work because they're hurt. And it's this vicious cycle. And I was talking to a carrier president in New York, and he said, Chris, I'm tired of seeing my carriers go homeless. And that generally happens because you can't find a doctor, you don't have a CA-16, and you don't have COP. So when your friends get hurt at work, those are three things that if you can't remember to tell them anything else, tell them that. Don't just go to the doctor the supervisor tells you to go to. Demand a CA-16 and get COP. Do those three things, and things are likely to turn out really good. Yeah.
I got a question.
Sure.
You know, like, I'm from Sumter, South Carolina. And the thing about Sumter, no doctors wants to do injury comp.
Yeah, I know.
None of them.
Yeah.
And see, and the problem with Sumter, you know, Greenville or Florence.
Yeah. So it's that way in almost every state. In almost every state. The first example that I saw of that is in Alabama, where we're about to open our 4th office in Alabama. And before the first office, there was nobody that would touch it. Nobody. I called 11 pages of doctors once to get no after no after no. 11 pages, not 11 doctors. 11 pages of doctors, probably 100 doctors. Wow. And just no after no after no, 100 times in a row. And it's that way everywhere.
They don't want to do the paperwork, you know. That's the whole thing.
My experience was, my injury happened in 2006, was that when I would go into the doctor's office, that's when you still would call the Department of Labor, and I would get embarrassed because the Department of Labor would argue with the provider and their staff about what diagnosis code that they should use before they even saw me.
Yeah.
And so then I was in there in pain because it was a back injury, hip, and they would just tell me, well, Ms. Walker, we're not going to see you today because the Department of Labor refuses to let us do what they should. They haven't seen me. They're the provider, they have to do the diagnosis. So a lot of times I found that's why the providers didn't want to deal with the Department of Labor because they would just deny, they weren't going to pay them.
So in that example you just gave, that doctor just didn't know what they were doing.
It was a couple of them.
There's not ever
But
been.
that was in 2006. We didn't have it.
So I've been doing this since 2007, and I've never asked permission to help somebody.
See.
Right. Ever. It's never even come up. Yes, sir.
I found a lot of these doctors don't want to say they're not credentialed because they don't know. So you get a lot of lawyers to do the same thing, and they play that game because they want the patient's money. They want that insurance claim. So I've learned you go to your primary care. There's only one facility in the whole state, which is this facility that's federally credentialed, and you don't tell them you're doing a federal claim or you work for the post office or some federal agency. You don't tell them that.
Because they'll reject you.
Exactly. They won't help you. They'll almost essentially put you out and close the door.
Yeah.
And you don't tell them what you're doing, but you use them to get the medical records, and then you come to here.
Yeah.
But it's ridiculous that there are no other federal injury centers around here unless you go to Florida or Atlanta. And it's not crazy that you have to drive 4 hours, but for your expected outcome, you have to go to where you get results.
Yeah.
And this is the only place that gets improvements and results than anywhere else.
I'll tell you what, when we first started this franchise, and I've been doing, like I said, comp since 2007, just for federal workers' comp. And I've done state comp too, but that's irrelevant. But since 2007. And it was in 2020 or 19, it might have been 18. Here's what it was. On Thanksgiving Day, when everyone else was watching football, I was recreating this company. And because we didn't have enough offices. At the time, we had 7. We weren't a franchise yet. And so it was hard. There was a barrier to entry for doctors to join. And it was hard for us because we didn't have good systems to train a whole bunch of people, right? And so we spent about 6 months just completely overhauling our entire system, becoming an actual franchise. Just like McDonald's is a franchise. We follow all the same rules that they do. But as a result of that, we're now able to bring on doctors at a much faster rate. We went since 2020 from 7 to 50 something offices. And we intend to open offices. My goal is to have an office within range of every federal employee in all 50 states. That's a big goal, but nobody else cares about it. I'm the only one that does. She cares a little bit too. So I know that's painful. It's the whole reason we have a franchise. The entire reason we do this. If you guys needed something else, I probably would have done that instead. But this is what was needed. And so we're working on it. We have 7 more offices that are in line right now to get started from East to West Coast. And I have a feeling it's going to be a lot more than that in the coming year. So, e-comp. I talked about COP. Now, the other thing on this form, it says medical billing. I'm at a doctor's office, okay, that as a franchise I have an interest in, and I'm telling you, you don't need to care about medical billing. It's not your problem. Okay, it's the doctor's problem. I don't even know why they put that in there. And contacting OWCP, that's funny. Anybody wants, call that number, and I'll bet you they won't answer the phone. No, you never do. But when they don't answer the phone, you leave a voicemail because they transcribe every voicemail so it's all in text. And then they're required to listen to the voicemail. Eric Blowers told me that. Eric's sitting in the back over there. And so we actually did that. I have this case. A good friend of mine fell down at the post office, hit his head, and got a stroke. And 8 years later, we got his claim accepted. It was an 8-year uphill nightmare. But the last step was his mother called, the claims examiner left a voicemail that got transcribed and caused it to go to a 4th second opinion doctor. How many second opinion doctors should you get? I don't know. But this guy had 4. And that finally got the case accepted. But it was leaving a voicemail that made it happen because they were ignoring it. They were ignoring it because we wrote a really good report. And I think they looked at it and went, we're going to have to accept this thing now. So, what questions do you have on this CA-10? All right, well, I'm going to keep talking because you'll come up with more questions. How long do you have to report a work injury? Now, this is for your friends. You've all reported yours already. You're here.
3 years?
It is 3 years. You're very good students.
My husband's a postmaster. He's on the dark side. My husband's a postmaster. He's the dark side.
I'm so happy you told me that because I got a whole thing for supervisors. I normally don't hold back, but now out of respect.
Wait, that's even after you leave the office and you come back to report an injury?
You have 3 years from the date of injury to report an injury. And if it's a CA2 claim, which we haven't really got into, a CA1 is an injury that happens in one shift, CA2 happens over time, right? Well, a CA2 claim is 3 years from the date that you were reasonably aware that it was work-related. People used to ask me all the time, what do I put as my date of injury? I say, well, here's the rule. You have 3 years from whenever you know it's work-related. When do you think you knew it was work-related? Today. Well, you got 3 years from today. How about that? I can't tell you what the date is, but you figured it out yourself. And so they really try to make it easy for you to report these injuries, but still only 14% of people have accepted claims. Because it's still not so easy. We still don't know about this form. We still have to drive 4 hours to get to a doctor, right? And we're still having to mess with our supervisors who, except for one guy, are not worth a damn. Excuse my language. The one guy is, of course, your husband. He's got to be the best postmaster of all time. Must be. Tell him I said hi. But that 3-year thing is so important because I promise you, you've got coworkers who think it's too late because they heard that they have 30 days. They got it confused with something else. They heard they have 45 days, confused with something else. 2 weeks. I hear 3 days. I hear all kinds of things that aren't right. And they're thinking, gosh, I just wish I would have been able to get help for this, but it's too late. But it's not too late. We were talking to people yesterday whose injury was 2 years ago. This one particular guy. He said, man, 2 years ago, I'm using my health insurance because it's too late. It's not too late. It's 3 years. It's not too late. So you should tell your friends that too. If they just know about this and that it's not too late, you probably are going to save their lives. And I mean that very literally because it's too sad to talk about the number of people I know of that took their life because of a work injury.
I was told I shouldn't have left the office first. So
that's irrelevant.
yeah, that's
You can go home for 3 years and report later. That's the rule. That's the rule. Now, I recommend reporting right away. I recommend reporting right away. This first section says you should report as soon as possible. Now, everybody knows me, knows what the answer to what is as soon as possible. What's the answer? Now. Right now is as soon as possible. It's as soon as possible time to do anything. But people don't. They just wait. I usually will find like a group of guys, and I might have thought it was you, but you seem pretty smart, so it's not you. But I'll say that's the rub some dirt on it table right there. Because we're just going to rub some dirt on it and hope it gets better. Well, also, if you know me, hope is not a strategy. Okay, not one that generally works. So if you're in the rub some dirt on it camp, then you're going to wait and see what happens. And next week comes around, you're like, man, this thing still hurts. I'm going to go ahead and report my injury. Guess what happened? You have 7 days to report an injury and still get a CA-16. On day 8, you cannot have it. They can give it to you, but they won't. So now you have no way to pay your medical bills. But now you're somebody that says, okay, it's getting a little better. I'm going to keep waiting. 30 days passes. Guess what happened? Now you can't have COP. So you wait 30 days. You don't have any way to pay your bills, and you have no way to take time off because you can't have a CA-16 and you're not eligible for COP anymore. So as soon as possible is now.
What happens if you report? That didn't happen to me. But what happens if you report and they don't give you your COP?
Okay, so in box 15 of the CA1, you have 2 choices: sick and annual or COP. I think it's in the reverse order. Letter A is COP. Choose it. And I was talking to a claims examiner because I was actually doing a training in front of claims examiners and OSHA people, which was fun. It was just like this, 3 hours long of people looking like deer in the headlights. And that's their agency, okay? And if you're watching, I love you. Okay. But the claims examiner was the president of the union. He was a senior claims examiner, and he said something that was so enlightening to me. He said, everybody should just elect COP. Because if you don't, or if you do, they're just going to come and get your sick and annual leave anyways. So why use your sick and annual leave when there's a chance you won't have to? If you get your claim accepted, you never have to pay back COP. So they're not going to come and get your sick and annual leave.
Well, that's why the information got to get out there.
That's right. So this claims examiner said everybody should take COP because what's the downside?
What if you did COP and they still used all your sick and annual and now you're trying to get it back and they are not working with you on that?
We are venturing into Eric Blauer's territory. You want to answer that, Eric?
Who's not working? The postal?
The post office. So HR is trying to get my supervisors.
It's probably injury comp. It's not HR. Injury comp does not recognize their responsibilities half the time with respect to what their obligation is in that instance. Is this a conflict with COP?
Yes. So I checked COP and have not been to work. So HR said that they reached out to management, which I have in my e-comp file, that they reached out and they told management that it was supposed to be COP, that they had a certain amount of time to do it, yet they still have not complied with HR. So
Management has not complied with
management has not complied with HR.
Did you file a grievance?
Not yet.
File a grievance.
I agree with this.
First step. That's the first step we have to do.
Okay.
This is somebody just said, file a grievance.
Yeah, and we just got that online too, file a grievance. And the other thing, Eric, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard that they can go in and just basically change the code, the payment code.
HR said
Just switch it to
very
COP.
simple for them to do. He doesn't understand why they haven't done it.
There's 2 codes, it's IOD 49 or IOD 60, injury on duty 49 or 60. One is approved, one is not approved. Coding is everything with respect to coding for medical bill payment.
Yeah.
Coding with regard to injury compensation. Coding by your supervisor. Chris, do you maintain on your website the coding for postal?
No.
I'll give it to you.
It sounds like I'm about to, though.
Yeah. So all the codes are publicly available, and you should double check your supervisor to ensure they are properly coding them. Once the claim is accepted, coding should change. But COP is not an issue with respect to OWCP. That's an agency issue. So don't go to OWCP complaining about COP issues. That's an agency issue. You are entitled by statute, federal law, to continuation of pay for, I think it's 45.
Up to 45 days.
Yeah, and that's a bit of a problem. They just changed the process, and we had this discussion recently with OWCP. They now allow OWCP claims examiners 60 days to accept a case. So what happens with that delta of 15 days between 45 and 60? They never took that into account. So it creates problems, but the quicker the federal injury center gets your paperwork in, and depending upon what the issue is, all issues are addressed, OWCP raises, the quicker you will get paid by OWCP. If you have a disability from the work injury, which they're not willing to accommodate. Those are the three criteria. If you work injury, if you have a disability and they're not willing to accommodate you, then you're entitled to pay. It can be partial or total disability.
And when you say file a grievance, what do you mean by that?
With respect to somebody in management not doing their job, you've got to file a grievance with the union. Then they sit down.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out how
Yeah.
you file a grievance.
With the
Okay.
union.
And your union in particular really, really enjoys filing grievances.
Yeah.
They love it. They file grievances for breakfast. They're very good at it. Yeah.
I know of a postmaster, she doesn't know her job, and she screws up everybody's pay and their coding.
Let me make sure that the world online heard that, because they'll be shocked that a postmaster doesn't know their job. What was
So
that?
she doesn't know her job,
Uh-huh.
and she doesn't know how to file it for pay or anything, but she's not willing to say, okay, I don't know, will somebody teach me or help me? She just screws up everybody's paperwork. She's even willing to just say you were AWOL. Both, either.
Grievance. Yeah.
Just file a grievance.
I got a question. Okay, so someone got injured. I'll say me, I got injured. All right? Went to the doctor, the hospital. They sent me back to work. All right, so I worked a couple days. Now they give me a hard time with my COP.
Because you're working. Okay, so COP is good for up to 45 days of
It has
time
to be
off.
45 days.
It doesn't say it's not. It doesn't say it's good for 45 consecutive days. 45 days. So if any time during that period of time you need to use it, that's what your COP is for. It's better to go back to work. There's no hoops to jump through. You just clock in. But if you got to be home in the first 45 days, you're eligible for it. But they don't understand the rules, and that's why they're doing this to you. They just don't get the rule. There's nowhere in the rule that says that you have to take 45 days in a row. What if you need to be off one day to go to the doctor? Use COP. Well, I was just at work 3 days. Well, no, you can't use COP. That's crazy. There's nowhere in the rules on that. There's one right behind you. Yeah.
Oh, it was just part of his, because no, he did work. When he got his last paycheck, all they paid him for was the hours he worked. And when he asked the postmaster, she told him he needed to see comp and fill out the paperwork to get the rest of the pay. But he checked COP.
Eric, you were going to say something about it.
You said one thing that bothered me. You said that the doctor or the emergency room sent you back to your job. That is not a medical care provider's responsibility. They are to give you what your medical restrictions are. It's then up to the agency to determine whether or not they can accommodate those restrictions. So either you were disabled and you could not go back to work, or you didn't have a disability, you should have been back to work.
Well, 9 stitches in the hand, I had disability.
You did.
Respond to her
So
here.
you would have had medical
Chris
restrictions.
is working on this.
Doctor
I'm
said he
specifically
doesn't
working
do
on that one.
Yeah, the exact words the doctor said. He said, I don't do paperwork.
Yeah. You don't do paperwork. So any doctor that doesn't do paperwork doesn't get paid, and they don't stay in business for very long. You got to do paperwork. Yeah, and I know this. So normally, here's what I teach. I say, like, there's 6 categories of doctors that will definitely get your claim denied. In the old days, people would start writing it down, and I'd say, don't write this down. You're not going to like it. The reason why is it's every category of doctor. Okay? It goes around in your agencies to call an ortho. You have a sprained ankle. What is an ortho going to do to a sprained ankle? They're going to give you ibuprofen until you use an ice pack, right? So not an ortho. And anyways, they also don't want the claim. They don't want to see you until your claim's accepted because they can't get paid. And they have this bad habit of wanting to get paid. Urgent care. Who runs an urgent care? Nurse practitioners, okay? Now, we love nurse practitioners. We have a nurse practitioner or a PA in every single one of our offices. We love them. The rule is, though, if they don't have a counter signature by a medical doctor, it's not valid. So who's running the urgent cares? Nurse practitioners. And almost never is an MD on site. And if they are, they don't sign the paperwork. ERs just don't have time. VA doctors. I say all the time, VA doctors are often world-class doctors with 0 OWCP training.
No, we don't have any OWCP at all.
The employees are not your mission. The veterans are, which makes sense. That's why you exist.
Well, sometimes the veteran will come in wanting me to fill out that paperwork, and I'm like, I don't.
Well, sure, because there's a lot of veterans in the federal workforce, of course. Your family doctor. You love your family doctor. You tell your friends about your family doctor, but your family doctor's not trained in OWCP. Right? Did I catch everybody? Chiropractors. You can go see chiropractors. You know, there's chiropractors here. But what everyone knows, air quote, is that you can't go to a chiropractor for a work injury. Well, that's not true. Okay? Chiropractors can do two things. They can diagnose subluxations and treat them. And they can do anything in the nature of physical therapy, as long as it's prescribed by a medical doctor. So you can be in a chiropractic office where there's a medical doctor, and someone will say, you can't go there, it's a chiropractic office, because they don't know the rules. They don't think of letter D. And they don't realize that in healthcare, chiropractors and medical integrate all the time. All the time. We have 53 examples of that right now, where they're integrated together. So all of those categories of doctors will get your claim denied because they're not trained. You should see our training platform. It's unbelievable. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned 45 days. I just want to make it clear. It's 45 days from the date of injury. It's not like 45 days you can sporadically go here, here, and here.
Yeah.
It's 45 days from the start of you reported your injury,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. And the bottom, like, I'm looking at the rule in my head. It says 45 calendar days. And some people think, well, it's just any 45 days over any period of time. It runs out. It's 45 calendar days, right? So, yeah.
So I've heard you say this about, don't go to your normal doctors, go to one of your centers. Like the gentleman that said he had to have 9 stitches. What do you do in an emergency?
Okay, so actually, what you said, I say is mostly right. I don't say don't go to another doctor. Okay, it's not don't go to another doctor. Okay, do I prefer you to go to federal injury centers? Yeah, McDonald's prefers you to eat a McDonald's cheeseburger too, you know? And so, yeah, I prefer it, but also I prefer you winning, and that's all we do. But if you have to go to another doctor, what I say is don't revere your doctor. They are not gods, okay? They're not perfect. They make lots of mistakes. The book I wrote, has anybody seen the book, the recent one, 25 Things You Can Do to Win? Well, the good news is everybody here gets a copy. I brought some with me. But I wrote that book for somebody in Iowa, okay, or 4 hours from here that won't make the drive. I wrote that book for someone that's in a remote area so they can get their own claim accepted. But what it takes is to not care about your doctor's feelings and to be able to say, Doc, that sucks, do a better job. Essentially kick him in the butt. And I say that as a guy that's worked with doctors since I was 20 years old, and I work with about 100 of them now. And if it was any of them, I'd tell them, I hope your patients kick you in the butt if you don't do a good job. You got to get the job done. And so I wrote that book for everybody that can't access a federal injury centers. Because if you do all the 25 things and your claim gets denied, I would be shocked. But it does take a certain amount of kicking in the butt to get things done. Yeah.
I'm sorry. So how about this? Let's say you have somebody who can't make that 4-hour drive and they only have like the local doctors, right? Can you go to that local doctor, get the paperwork that you need, and get it to a federal injury center and still operate the same way? You just do it, off of the records that doctor.
So you can do it. The only problem that you may run into is having to change treating doctors at that point, because the claims examiners don't have to allow a change of treating doctor. So let's say you find a doctor in your town and you go to them a few times and then you want to switch and go someplace 4 hours away. The claims examiner will almost never say yes to that. They're going to say, you have a doctor in your town right now, suck it up, deal with it.
So I'll learn how to get around that, but...
Well, there's ways around it,
right.
But that will be one of the barriers, is the claims examiner will say no.
Yeah, they will not want to approve your travel.
That's right. So what you have to do is have that doctor write a letter to the claims examiner saying, remove me from this case. And the rule says that request shall be granted. You can have that doctor write a referral. The rule says all referrals shall be honored. Or you can get the claims examiner to say yes. But in that hypothetical case, it won't be possible.
Okay. I got you.
Can I ask a question?
No.
We moved from Connecticut 3 years ago.
Yeah?
And my claim has been ongoing since like 2002. And my claims examiner told me that I had to find a doctor in South Carolina.
That's definitely not true.
That's what everybody kept telling me. But he refused to let me continue to see the one in Connecticut that I had been seeing for 15 years.
The claims examiner can't stop you from going to your doctor.
I found this place, and he got upset because it's 3.5 hours from me. And now he plays around with, maybe I'll pay you travel when I feel like it. Right now, I'm still waiting on travel from when I was here in June.
Well, if it's over 100 miles round trip, it's very difficult to get reimbursed for that. Very. Now, you can get pre-authorization. In other words, the claims examiner in advance says, I'll pay you.
Mm-hmm.
But the rule says up to 100 miles round trip.
But to me, it should be pre-approved because he's the one that told me I had to find a new doctor in South Carolina.
Well, shoulds are fun, but they don't really apply. Just with the rule. Yeah, Eric.
I was at a conference last week, and I was told by the office director's supervisor that should not be standard. If you cannot find a medical care practitioner within 100 miles, they should regularly be approving this travel. And if you can't find them, say then you find them. You find me a provider.
I did, and he told me to go on this website, and there was a whole list, and there's nobody in South Carolina on that list.
Everybody within 100 miles, there's no one I can find. I rely upon you to help me find this person.
Yeah.
One has owner's back on them, which they don't want, so they then will approve.
And that list, by the way, is the list I went through 11 pages to not find a doctor.
So did
it's
I.
that
You
list.
wouldn't believe the amount of doctors that I called in South Carolina.
I would believe.
Let me tell you the problem with that list. Anybody who goes to an emergency room and gets stitches, and the doctor's name is the person at the bottom, gets put on that list. But like this gentleman said, they want the paperwork. So because they were paid by OWCP one time, their name goes on that list. That's why there's so many doctors on the list, because they realize after one time they're never going to deal with OWCP again.
I get it.
Yes, on his email.
Wow.
Yeah.
And nobody on that list is federally accredited. Nobody.
Well, the federal accreditation doesn't matter. The only thing that really matters is state accreditation as a physician. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about what Chris does all the time.
Getting them credentialed with OWCP.
Yes, so that they can submit bills to OWCP. Anybody can submit a bill to OWCP. If you're going to regularly do it, you should be
Credentialed.
Certified.
Credentialed.
Whatever. Doesn't matter. Don't get hung up on these credentialing. The only thing that matters is that you have a medical doctor who's signing off the medical reports, and he is licensed by the state that you're seeing. That's all. Would you disagree, Chris?
I can help you. No, you're 100% right. I was also going to add, let's make sure that your medical doctor is not a felon. That generally will disqualify you. Yeah, I can definitely help you with that. So I was talking about time frames, though, when we got off on this, right? 7 days to get a CA-16, 30 days for COP. And that's a serious problem. And because you have 3 years to report the injury. So it's super confusing, right? Was it 3 years? Is it 7 days? Is it 30 days? Is it 45 days? What is it? And so a lot of people just say, forget about it. They throw their hands up. This is just too much. It's overwhelming, right?
And that's what I got now. I got a lot of people who got injuries. Now it's coming back to haunt them.
Yeah.
And it's been years because they didn't want to deal with the whole system, Chris.
Yeah, and they don't want to deal with their supervisor, too. Somebody tell me what number 25 in that book says.
Forget your supervisor's feelings.
Forget your supervisor's feelings. I started doing this last year. I think it was last year. I'd be in a room full of people and say, okay, repeat after me. I don't care what my supervisor thinks. And that's all fun and games, and we can all laugh about it, but the bottom line is when you get to work, you care a little bit, right? But you know who doesn't care about yours?
They don't.
They don't.
They sure don't.
They don't. Because they don't have to. They'll replace you tomorrow.
Right.
And that's really sad. It's really sad. Okay, I want to talk about another thing, since Eric's here and he's an expert in the subject. In my second book, Eric wrote a chapter in the book about third-party injuries. Who here drives for a living? I mean, who's a letter carrier who drives for a living? Okay. Yeah. All right. You drive for a living. All right, so do y'all have a bunch of billboards out here for personal injury lawyers? Yeah, don't ever call them. You know that if you get hurt in a car wreck on the job, that's covered by OWCP. That is not a personal injury claim. That's a work comp claim. And when you call a personal injury lawyer, you're giving up a lot of benefits, potentially. if your claim doesn't get accepted, the case will settle one day. Okay? It'll settle. You might get a settlement, and that'll feel really good. But the case is over. And now you're still not eligible for any federal work injury benefits. You're not eligible for your paid time off in the future. You're not eligible. Who's ever heard of a schedule award? Okay, so normally if I don't have hands raised, I say who's ever heard of money? Because that's what a schedule award is. But you're not eligible for any of that if you get in a car wreck and you don't report it as a work injury. If you call a personal injury lawyer, you're going to hose your case. Like, you don't even have a case. And most people don't know that. And except that the rule says that you may be required to pursue the third party, meaning to file a personal injury claim, right? So they want you to file the claim, but don't do it with a personal injury lawyer. Eric, do you know anybody that does those? That's a federal lawyer?
In South Carolina?
Anywhere in the country?
Well, maybe 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Not
many.
many.
The problem becomes that the personal injury attorney only cares about settling the case, getting paid, and walking away. And he'll tell you to go pay for a federal workers' compensation attorney, and they're very few and far between. We do both.
You're one of the 2?
No, I know 2 more.
2 more.
But they are difficult. And I mean, I had one last year where a postal rural carrier was killed by Lake Norman in North Carolina. Gentleman crossed the line. She was on a route, and I can't recall if she was seatbelt on or not. Head on and killed her instantly. $30,000 liability. That's all there was. And the personal injury attorneys were drooling all over it, but I got the family benefits for life because the person was killed in performance of their duty. No personal injury attorney is going to do that. They're just not. They don't understand the federal system. And I see these all the time, and I usually get called after they've settled the case and they're looking for a schedule award and they have a correct against future benefits, and this thing is really complex very quickly. Just make a phone call and say, hey, what do I do? I oftentimes work with local counsel and say, we'll work the case with you. You handle the personal injury side, I'll handle the workers' compensation side. But they have to be addressed jointly. You can't do them one after another. And whenever I get a call from somebody anywhere in the country with that type of situation, I pull up Gini's website on her maps of where the nearest federal injury center is, and that's where I'm referring somebody to. The paperwork has to be done properly. They will get you to a orthopedic surgeon or to a specialist if and when you need them.
Yeah.
They specialize in that. But I hear the accolades that are being lauded upon federal injury centers. Trust me, the OWCP recognizes and realizes they don't have the medical care providers throughout the country. If it weren't for federal injury centers, I don't know what people would do. I don't. This is horrible. They were acknowledged last week. The director of OWCP was there. He acknowledged it's a problem. They don't have an answer. They don't know how to fix it. They tried to make it a prerequisite for federal health benefits, Blue Cross Blue Shield, to take OWCP cases if they're going to offer insurance to federal employees. And OPM, Office of Personnel Management, got involved and said, you can't stick that requirement on there. We'll never get people signing up for federal benefits. The insurance companies. So it's a conundrum. I don't have an answer. We deal with what we have, and we try to help people get through it. Chris and Gini and people here are the ones that are boots on the ground. I'm at a higher level, and they know when they contact me. But it's a mess. No way around it. This is a mess.
So all of that came from don't call personal injury lawyers. And
I bill hourly. That's why I thought.
Yeah. But the last thing I want to go over, because we've talked about time frames, I talked to you about the CA10, and you know the difference between a CA1 and a CA2. But at the end of this, I used to have this desk calendar. Remember they may still have them. Those tear-off calendars, they're about this big, and I'm a sports fanatic. Okay, don't start talking to me about sports unless you want to get real bored. Okay, because I'll just keep going. I had this calendar, tear-off calendar, and it was quotes. And there's this one coach, and I think he was from Georgia or something. It was multiple body parts, yeah. And we know of a person who lost the use of their thumb and got $30,000. But there are also some that are a fraction of that. You know, they're not all big giant dollars. And the worse you are, the more money you potentially get. So the more money you got, the worse you are anyways. So I'd rather have my thumb and find a way to make $30,000. Okay. But it is a federal benefit that most people don't even know about. Now, Eric specializes in knees and hips. That's like his bread and butter. And nobody in here stands or walks for a living, do you? Nobody in here's done it for like 10, 15, 20 years? Right?
And going through pain?
Yeah. And I know what happens. I've got screws in both of my knees, okay? And it's very painful to have like osteoarthritis because that develops over time. You walk 10 miles a day for 20 years, do the math. That's a lot of miles. That's a lot of miles. And so at the end, most people don't realize that they have this schedule award benefit. So they leave a bunch of money on the table that is rightfully theirs. And so I don't really teach schedule awards, although it's in a couple of my books. Eric can literally write the book on it. But you should just be aware that it's a benefit you have if you report your injury, if your claim gets accepted. And your claim can't get accepted if you don't report. So there's a lot of benefits that are out there that everyone has access to and should have a right to. And they do have a right to. But they just don't know about it. So I told you at the beginning that I was going to ask you this again. After everything you heard, who's willing to tell somebody about it? Who knows right now 3 people that need help? If you think about it, probably everybody does. I think almost everybody does. And we're live on Facebook too. This is for everybody out there. You can just hand a brochure to somebody.
Yeah, I'm gonna make copies.
Right? And I've got, believe it or not, I got a stack of brochures here. Right? It's not a coincidence. I'd really appreciate it if you go back to your workstations and just tell people that there's help. Don't assume they know. There's help available. You have a CA-10 that you can post, and then they're going to say, well, this thing says I can choose my own doctor. Where do I go? Now, they can choose their own doctor, and they can go someplace else if they want to. But you know that's not the right thing for them. And so if you would please take brochures with you on your way out and give them to everybody you know of that needs it. Because that's how we make a huge dent. That's how we make a big dent. You know, every year there are, I forget the number, 60,000 accepted claims, give or take, 60, 65,000 accepted claims out of 2.8 million federal employees. Does that sound like a bad number? It sounds awful.
Yes.
It sounds awful, and we can do something about it, and I've just recruited you to help. So I really appreciate that. What other questions do you have?
Can you go to a post office and say, hey, you're injured, let me show you how?
I can't. It's illegal for me to solicit at a federal agency.
Not you. Can any one of us just go and say, hey, you're injured?
They're not going to like it because...
I don't care what they don't like.
no. Well, they're on the clock literally, that's why.
Okay,
Yeah.
but you can catch them on
Right.
the clock.
So what we like to do is we take a brochure and we'll go stand in line with the clerks, buy some stamps, and say, would you put this in your break room? And you wouldn't believe the number of times they say, no, I can't put those in my break room. Who's the break room belong to? Belongs to you. I'm pretty sure it's in your contract too with your
I think
unions.
the biggest thing is nobody knows what a musculoskeletal disorder is. So they don't believe that they're injured, and their bosses will say, you're not injured. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And until they understand that,
Yeah.
and they really see that, I've learned people be like, wow.
Yeah.
And you make a really good point. It's obvious when someone gets in a car accident and they're dead that they've had a traumatic injury.
Right.
An occupational claim is just as debilitating as a traumatic injury,
Yep.
sometimes more so.
Right.
We're gonna
Talk about
have him come up
disease,
next.
we talked about osteoarthritis, we talked about joint and hip, knee, shoulder issues, carpal tunnel syndrome is horrible.
Right.
They don't recognize those because
I
they
wanna
don't
ask you
appreciate
something
the pain.
later.
Sure.
About
That
I'll
is
be back
just
here
as
tomorrow.
valid of a claim.
I'm going to be here all day today and tomorrow.
If you think it'll
File it
help
as an occupational
tomorrow,
claim.
some stuff
I
going
would
on.
recommend
Sure.
you get the medical evidence in order
Happy to
to
help.
absolutely document the
Okay.
nexus
Okay.
between the diagnosed condition and work activities, then you move forward. But don't let them in any way impugn the pain you're experiencing or the validity of the claim. It's a valid claim.
Right.
You're right, they do downplay all the time.
The one way you can tell to become a union steward, I used to be one. If that's how you wanna help the people, that's how you do it. Become a steward, be knowledgeable of what you can and can't do, and spread the word. I'm just
I
saying,
don't work for the post office.
Yeah.
I'm not even employed. I'm not even.
I'm just saying that you can, that's how you spread the word. Becoming a union steward is the best way to spread the word about this, because they need knowledgeable people who know, who knows OWCP. This is one of my passions. I've told 4 people at the VA, I used to work post office as well.
And that's a good answer for everybody in here that is a federal employee. I agree with that
So you
100%.
become a junior steward and you inform the people what they can do and how they can get it accomplished.
Yep.
That's the best way to help people.
And
who in here is a union steward?
we used to be, because she's not one anymore. And
We have
so
two
we
here.
remind, yeah, but that's the truth. That's how I had to
And
fight
that's why
against them.
Yeah.
I had to be, I was the first one at that clinic, and they gave me, when I say I had to file like 2 EO suits, all kinds of things, and I'm still there. The ones who did against me are long gone. But that was the only way we could get certain things and let the staff know, because they don't know anything.
That's right. Any other questions? Eric, did you have something you wanted to add?
Eric's next.
You know, one thing that you said that was 100% true, you have to file a claim within 3 years. However, I just got a case where a rural carrier was injured in 2017, December 11th of 2017. He slipped on ice as he was coming up Bojangles on his way to work. He went in and told the supervisor that he was injured. Supervisor said, "I didn't tell you to stop at Bojangles, you're not going to get the form, the CA1 form." It's 6 years later. I'm filing this as a valid claim because he gave notice to the supervisor, and rural carriers from the time they leave their home until they return home are on the clock. So it's a valid claim. Don't necessarily think that you can't get a claim accepted just because we're at the 3-year mark. Chris is right. You file within 3 years, but it's not filing, it's notice.
It's reporting.
Within 3 years. So there's always exceptions to every rule. That's what law school is you're learning the exceptions to the rule, not what the rule is. So it's worth a conversation with federal injury centers, with Chris, Gini, anybody, they know this stuff, but the issue is notice. Did you give notice within the 3 years? Not, did you file a claim? And everything has an exception. Chris, am I wrong? Everything
No.
in the system has an exception.
Yeah, so far.
I have a question on that. I had a person one time that got hurt, and they waited a while, and they wrote them up for not having it in the timely manner.
Yeah, they write you up for not reporting on time, but then they harass you when you report it all.
I agreed to want it, but I'm saying this is the things they do.
Yeah.
I understand, but recognize also that that's the dichotomy between what the post office is going to do to you and what OWCP will approve.
Right.
Post office is, I was a federal employee. I know where I'm coming from in this regard. Federal government is difficult to deal with. They've got bureaucratic processes in place to dissuade you from pursuing what rights you have. That's why I'm here. I hate to say it. I can't take every case, but I'll give anybody 10 minutes and say this is what we do. I like to tell people how to help themselves. I don't want people to hire me.
You got any cards?
No.
If you need to talk to Eric, I'd talk to her. That's my way in too. Okay, so I want to end with this because this thing just happened, and now that I have this room full of people, this is perfect. Does anybody mind being on camera? I'm not asking you to talk, but like if
No.
okay, so you're all okay with that? All right.
Hi, Luke.
Fantastic. Yeah. So we had this guy who follows us, or I don't know why he was following us, on Wednesday night. Okay, it's called Wednesday Night OWCP Chats. Okay, that's where you find us live. And a couple of times he was just really, really, really mean to her about that we're a scam, right? What was he saying?
We're scamming, stop posting. I'm tired of seeing your stuff on our union pages. Don't
you have your own page? Yeah, it's called Wednesday Night Chats. That's how you found us.
And I'm like, the money? We're not collecting any money.
Yeah, so this is actually not uncommon. We get people just from time to time that just get rubbed the wrong way or whatever, and then they'll tell us, "Oh, you're just a scam. You're just a scam. All you care about is the money." Who here paid anything? Okay, so that's a room full of people who know it's not a scam.
That's right, correct. Yeah.
And the problem, and the reason I bring it up, is because I'm live here, and the real issue is people like that keep people like you from getting help. because someone else listens and go, oh yeah, that's a scam. I better not go there. Let me go to my family doctor because that's where I'm going to win. Or let me go to the ortho because that's where I'm going to win. Anyways, I just want to say that because I got a room full of people and that just happened. And so she found him and blocked him. So now he'll never see anything again and hopefully stop telling people that. But yeah, pass the word around. We do it right. We do it right. We do it clean. I appreciate that.
I turned it into my union 2 weeks ago. We had a meeting, and Wendy gave me a packet of stuff to give out, and they were so appreciative.
Yeah. Well, we all have the same thing in common. We're all on the same side of the table. They want to help you. We want to help you. And we ought to be able to do that together. Well, I want to thank all of you for coming. This is, I'm not kidding, my favorite thing to do. I love talking to people. So thank you. And we're going to be around all day. So if you got questions you want to talk about individually. Eric, was there something else you wanted?
I think you're next.
No.
Yeah.
Eric has no responsibility whatsoever. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on Zoom.